Hello and welcome back to Kalam IAS. In today's session of NewsKase, we'll be talking about the rupee, the fall, recovery and RBI's role in that. In this segment, we'll be talking about the recent rupee falling, and we are seeing that every day in the newspaper and in some different magazines also that rupee is continuously falling and at times it is recovering at the same time. So it is not a free fall, it is not a linear pictorial graph, but there is up and down in the graphical manner. With that, in this session, we'll be trying to understand the depreciation of rupee, the causes of depreciation, how it impacts the Indian economy, and what are the way forwards to contain the free falling rupee to a larger extent. What is the role of RBI in it? And thereafter, we'll be talking about foreign exchange and foreign exchange system. So this will be the entire discussion today, and let's start in our NewsKase series. So the first thing, that is the news which I have taken from the Mint. The news is about the rupee, its fall, recovery and RBI's role. In this news, if we see, there are certain key important points that you must note down that will be important for you from mains perspective as well as for prelims perspective. In that, if we see, currently $1 is equal to rupee 83.35, where in January it was around 73.13 rupees, $1 is equal to, and in January 22 the rupee depreciated to the level of 74 rupees 0.30. Now from January 2022 to November 2023, the rupee has depreciated almost around 9 rupees, and it has reached to 83.15 rupees. This was the latest data, where there was a highest depreciation which has reached around 83.50, but the rupee recovered. Now you need to understand what are the certain measures which RBI take for the recovery of rupee and to contain the free fall or quick fall of rupee. That will be one part of discussion. How RBI intervene in the forex so that this can be further contained. So first we need to know how depreciation of rupee impacts. So the news itself says the imports will become expensive because now you have to pay more rupee in front of dollar because the trade is in dollar. Then the depreciation of rupee helps in exports as it gives back more rupees in payment part. For example, you have exported the commodity of $100. So earlier when rupee was 80, so you got 8,000 rupees, but once it is 83, you got 8,300 rupees. So there is an increase in the export part. So earning more revenue in the export part. So export will become cheaper and import will become dearer or expensive in that manner. And the India's import, if we see, largely the 80% of the oil it consumes in the petroleum section or petrochemical section, it is imported. So that increases India's import dependence on different economy and also widens the current account deficit part. The intervened RBI, what RBI does to intervene, that is another part. And in that, if you'll see, RBI sells the dollars and buys rupee to slow down the depreciation of rupee. And this is the whole sole motive of RBI. No other motive is there, because in the exchange rate system, we follow flexible exchange rate system, which is based on market driven mechanism. Based on certain demands of dollar, when the demand of dollar will increase, the supply of rupee will also increase. At the same time, we need to supply more rupees, and that makes dollar stronger and rupee weaker to an extent, and that leads to depreciation of rupee. So certain key components that we'll be discussing, but let's finish this news part and then we'll come to the basics part into it. So the fall, what are the major reasons? What we have seen in last 19 months, like the fall up and down of the rupee. So let's see what were the major reasons for this fall in the last 19 months. So first thing, the US Federal Reserve, was largely responsible for it, where they were increasing the interest rates. They were increasing the Fed rates, the Fed hike, we say, to contain what? To contain inflation. For example, in India, if we see, RBI increases what? Repo rate. That is the policy rate. And based on that, banks increases the interest rate. So similarly, when the US Federal Reserve, that is the highest body there into that finance segment, monetary segment, when it will increase the rate to contain the inflation, definitely the interest rate will go at the higher side. Along with that, at the same time, the money they have printed and pumped during the COVID-19, they have started withdrawing that money from the market. So now two things are going to happen. One thing is the interest rate they have already increased. The another thing is the money is going down. So with less money at the higher interest rate, there is higher returns at the US dollar side. How? Because the money is less and interest rates are at the higher side. So with less money, you are getting more returns because interest rates are at the higher side. And that is creating a strong demand for the US dollar. And because of that, we have seen many times in news that there is a capital outflow from the market, from the Indian share market or the Indian market to a larger extent from the FPI side. The crowding out situation, where largely the investors are taking away the money from India, which they have invested in the Indian market, Indian financial market, and they are taking that money in the US financial market because they are getting higher returns there. That creates a strong demand. So with the strong demand, what it is doing, it is decreasing the value of rupee to a larger extent. I hope this is clear to all of you. Apart from it, it also increases this US Fed Reserve when it is increases because our external debt is largely in the form of dollars, right? So we need to pay more interest on that now. And with that, the government's debt service burden further increases, and this again increases more demand of dollar, and supply of rupee will eventually increase because we need to pay in dollars. And with that, again, the rupee is weakening. Then the recent increase in the current account deficit, which we have seen. If you have read the yesterday's newspaper, you have seen in the October months, due to festive season, import of golds had increased to 4-folds. This imports of gold, because largely we import the gold, right? So this has increased the payment, and the payment will be based in dollars because largely it is the highest acceptable country in the forms of trade internationally. So with that, it has further increased the current account deficit, and this current account deficit has increased because the goods deficit or trade deficit in the goods has increased due to larger import. Now the question comes, when the current account is at deficit, and what is current account? So the current account contains largely the trade in goods and services plus transfer payments, or I would say net transfer payments, right? And in this aspect, if we see, though we have surplus in services and transfers, but we have deficit in goods, and with that the deficit is increasing. It is at a higher side. We import more, much more than we export. One example is 85% to 87% of the consumption of the petroleum or crude oil products which we do in form of petroleum, gasoline, kerosene, diesel, etc., we are importing largely. And because of that import, the import dependence increases a lot. And because of that, the trade deficit is at a higher side. And although we have surplus in services we have surplus in transfer payments, that is the remittances we get, and in the capital account part also where the investment is coming. Though this is very high and all this narrow it down to an extent, but still it is around, if we talk about the current account deficit, it is around $2 billion in financial year 23. This will be around the estimated one. So that shows our imports are at much higher side than our exports. The next part of the newspaper, which was for the recovery purpose, what RBI can do and what has happened because of that certain recovery we have seen. For example, in few days back in the newspaper, it was the rupee has fallen down to 83 rupees 30 paise from $1, but it has recovered and came up to 83.01. How this has done? There were two major instances of that and two major possible reasons for that. And those reasons were the inflation, which has cooled down in US, which shows a fluctuation or an assumption that in near future the Fed rates, which US is constantly increasing, will be stable to a larger extent. And now we need to pay less in dollars. Again, the another part which has been largely seen in this case, that RBI has further intervened and it has sold the dollars in the market and buy the rupee part. So this was all about the news. Now we will move ahead to the basic concepts of the entire segment. So for that, let's start with that. You must have heard certain terms. Depreciation or weak or fall. At the same time, you have also heard the terms appreciation or strong or rise in terms of rupees in the exams and in the newspaper also. The first term, that is depreciation. It happens when the value of rupee goes down, and for that term we call the rupee has weakened to 3 paisas, 6 paisas against the dollar, or has fallen down to this much. And at the same time, when the rupee value gets higher, then it becomes appreciated. So what happens here in the first situation? It is completely based on demand and supply. When the demand for dollar will increase, eventually we need to supply more rupee in terms of practice, and this will lead to depreciating the rupee to a larger extent. Whereas with appreciation part, if we see, when the demand of dollar goes down or demand of rupee gets stronger, then the situation like this will come. How it is happening? When RBI is selling dollars and asking rupee in that part, so what is happening? The demand of rupee is increasing, and at the same time the demand of dollar is decreasing in the market, and that gives certain boost to rupee and it gets appreciated. At the same time, if at the global level the global oil prices, for example, earlier if it was $100 per barrel, and now it is $98 per barrel. So now we need to pay less rupee in that extent, and with that the rupee will get stronger or appreciated. And at the same time, if this $100 would have gone up and would have reached to $1.02 per barrel, so then what? We need to pay more rupee, and this had led to the depreciation aspect. So how appreciation and depreciation works, now you understood. Based on the increase in how much amount of rupee we need to pay, this appreciation and depreciation goes up and down. Fair enough. Now let's go back to the slide to understand what are the major causes of depreciating rupee. What are the major reasons behind it? So with that, first understand the status of forex and then we'll move to this depreciation part. So if we see the status of forex, that is foreign exchange reserve. If we see about this, so we see in December 2019, the forex was around $454 billion and it has increased in December 2020 by $580 billion. Again, it has further increased in a year to $635 billion. And why it was happening, that you need to know also. This was happening due to few major reasons. One, due to COVID-19, largely the imports were banned or reduced. And to some extent, the medical supplies in the form of exports has increased at the same time. At world level, the trade was reducing, but at the India level, these things were happening. And due to that, India's this foreign exchange reserve has reached to a record high of $635 billion. But post December, when the world started trading again with each another largely, the import segment of India has started further increasing. And at the same time, US has started increasing its Fed rates to contain the inflation part, and for that, starting the falling of rupee we see. Like from January 21 onwards, we see the rupee is consistently falling with certain up and downs till this, not December, November 2023. And we see from 73 rupees to 83 rupees, almost 10 rupees value have decreased to a larger extent. The percentage around 12 to 15%, rupee has decreased its value. So with that, if we see, it has reduced and around 70 billion RBI has given in the market or infused in the market so that the dollar versus rupee should not go as a free fall or highly volatile fall of rupee to a larger extent. Again, when the things were stabilized, it has increased, but within the passage of time, sometimes it increases, sometimes it decreases. And the recent evidence shows it has further decreased because the RBI has further infused the dollars in the market so that the rupee can be further contained. The falling of rupee can be contained. Now let's move forward to understand more. Just give me a minute. What are the major reasons of depreciation of rupee that you need to know? What can cause depreciation of rupee? This can come in your prelims examination. What are the major reasons of depreciating rupee? And with that, you need to know those important reasons. The reasons are the widening of current account deficit. That is the BOP situation, balance of payment situation, where we know our imports are more than our exports, and due to that, the expected current account deficit is around $2 billion, which ranges in between 2 to 3% of GDP. Fair enough? Then the strong demand of dollar against rupee. The dollar has get almost 15% stronger, and also we are seeing the dollar's strong demand is increasing further due to Fed rate hike and due to other issues in the market also. Likewise, the global externalities which are creating the supply chain disruption. What are these global externalities? One recent example is Israel-Hamas war. Post that, you can go with Russia-Ukraine war also and COVID-19 also at the same time. What is happening? It has increased the crude oil prices by almost $5 per barrel and it will further increase. So what is there now? पहले आपको $100 ही पे करने थे, अब आपको $105 per barrel पे करने पड़ेंगे. So now the $5 will converted into rupees and now you have to pay more rupees. That is further creating the strong demand for dollar to a larger extent. Fair enough? Then the crowding out aspect, if we see around 5.5 billion in the first quarter has been taken away from the Indian market. Why? Because of two major things. One is the Fed rate hikes, demand of more US dollars has led to another situation in the economy, and that has shown that they can get better returns in some safe havens where the investments are safer. The FPI, the foreign portfolio investment, which they do largely, which is very much volatile because it's largely a short-term investment in the share market. So that creates another crowding out of situation, and that has led to again weakening the rupee. Now US Fed rate hikes, we have seen consistently at every Fed meeting, they are hiking the rates to contain inflation and other things. This is increasing two things. One is the debt service burden and the external debt part. And because of all these aspects, if we see, the rupee is depreciating. Fair enough? Because we follow free market mechanism, flexible exchange rate system. So depreciation you understood. Now one more thing which you need to know, that is $1 is equal to 83.15 rupees. So what does this mean? This is called exchange rate. And what this exchange rate simply means, for $1 of a particular currency, you need to pay how much of your home currency. And in a similar way, for $1 of rupee, for $1 if we need to get, we need to pay 83.15 rupees. This is in terms of the exchange of currency, and as well as if we want the goods of particular amount, we need to pay this much of that per dollar. Fair enough? Now let's move forward to what are the major impacts of it, how it is impacting the economy, that we need to see. First thing come first, that is imports will get expensive. How? Earlier, for example, when $1 was equal to 80 rupees and you have to take something of $1,000, so you have to only pay 8,000 rupees in that. But once it becomes 83, in spite of 80, you have to pay 8,300 rupees. So the imports will become dearer to you. And this will further widen your trade deficit to a larger extent. Why? Because we are a net importer country. Then for the forex aspect, if rupee is very much volatile, it will negatively hurt the market sentiments. How? Because market will see net negative, or the credit rating of will go down in the same way. So for that, the rupee should be stable to a larger extent. Stable in the sense, not very much volatility should be there, so that investment should not be compromised. And because of that, RBI utilizes the forex, and what it does in the forex term, for say we reached to 632 billion, now we are around 598 billion. So where this money gone? This money gone to safeguard the rupee to a larger extent, or to meet out the deficit part to an extent. Now the third part, how it positively impacts to an extent. Our exports will become cheaper, or rather profitable. Profitable will be the better word. How profitable? Same calculation. that earlier $1 is equal to 80 rupees. When you were selling something of $1,000, you were getting in return 8,000, and now you are getting 8,300 rupees. So there is a benefit of 300 rupees to the exporters to a larger extent. Especially the pharmaceutical industries, the IT industries, healthcare segments had got benefit of this. Then with the inflation aspect, you need to understand one more thing with this. That is, if the prices of raw material and crude oil will increase at the international level, so this will further increase the prices, that will increase the manufacturing and processing cost, or further will increase the transportation cost in terms of oil, and this will lead to a situation in the retail that the prices of the commodities will further increase, and that will be inflationary. So that's why the retail inflation in the market has increased to a larger extent, many a times. Like in the last financial year, it was more than 6%. That was the higher limit se bhi zyada. Fair enough? Now we need to come to the debt service burden. The another impact, this debt service burden I have already told you, when the Fed rates would go at the higher side, when the rupee will further fall and dollar will get stronger, now you need to pay more rupee for the debt payment, and that will further increase your debt service burden. Fair enough? Then with the capital outflow, if there is negative sentiment in the market, there is volatility, so definitely the outflow will be there, because they will not be getting the returns they have expected to a larger extent. The money they are investing in dollars, they have to take it back. That is the right time also for them to take it back. Then the investments can be two things. Initially, good for investment. Why? Because if a person needs to spend $1 billion, this will be converted into 83 billion of rupees if it is depreciating. But if it is largely depreciating, the credit rating of the nation can further go down, and this may lead to another situation. So if the investment is coming in the form of FDI, it is good. But if it is coming in the form of FPI only, and that is with a very volatile FPI, that can negatively impact the economy to a larger extent. So these are certain impacts which can happen on the economy. Then what can be done to contain this? The things which we can do are the currency swap agreements between the two countries, for example, India and Sri Lanka, or India and some other country. What they can do is, they can trade in Indian rupee, can be converted with Sri Lankan rupee, and where the role of dollar will get down to a larger extent. This will further decrease the demand of dollar in the market and will make rupee a bit stronger. Intervention by RBI, which we have seen, selling dollars and buying rupee. They can also do some instrumental operation through their policy rates like repo rate. Along with this, the cut down import dependence, that is very much required. One such example is 87% of the oil is being imported. Not just oil, in terms of food items, there are so many food items which are being imported, like pulses, oils and other things. So we can take down other measures with the help of IARI, PUSA and other institutions, so that better productivity can be created. Exports, making exports at par with world standard, so that our exports can significantly increase, which India is trying to do, so that the mismatch between export and import can be cut down to a larger extent, and then restricting the short-term flows by putting some cap on that, and also promoting the ease of doing business for more FDI inflows, which are largely stable in that part. So these are certain measures which we can take to contain this free falling or quick falling of the rupee to a larger extent. Now you need to understand one more thing, that is what is forex and what are the key components of the forex. That will be another part of discussion. So let's do that, and then we'll come to the answer sheet points. So first thing, it is an asset held by RBI in foreign currency in India's context, and in world context, it is the asset which is largely carried by the central banks of the world. The components, if we talk about foreign currency assets, gold reserves, special drawing rights, and reserve transposition with IMF. These are the two sort of things which are with IMF that you need to know, and largely this has been asked in your UPSC prelims examination also. So with the SDR, if we go, these are the international reserve assets with the IMF. They supplement the foreign exchange reserves of the member country. So SDR is international reserve asset of IMF, which helps in foreign exchange reserves of the member country. They supplement the foreign exchange reserve. It is as simple as that. And impact on India's foreign exchange, if we talk about, it enhances the international liquidity for India. If we talk about reserve tranche position, so tranche is part of investment. So the investment India is doing, which it can further utilize without any conditionalities of IMF at any point of time when it feels like there is an emergency, they need the fund back for their macroeconomic stability and other aspects, they can take it back. That is reserve tranche position. So it represents India's quota in the IMF. It reflects India's position and voting power within this global financial institution. Furthermore, this reflects India's position and voting power within this global financial institution, and also it can be utilized in emergency period without any condition and all. Then impact क्या, it further strengthens the India's international standing, and also अगर कोई macroeconomic condition आती है, मतलब economic situation या crisis आती है, so India can use this as an emergency fund. Fair enough? Now, what are the impact of good forex reserve that you need to know? Like what are the positive impacts, what are the negative impacts at the same time. So if we talk about positive impacts, it shows stability in the economy. For say, the current forex shows India can import 11 months of its imports. So that is a very good sign, very stable country. And it also enhances the credit worthiness of the economy, that they have enough forex to meet out this part. If we talk about negative impact, the higher forex side shows the opportunity cost to maintaining it. They are not investing it in other measures and keeping it idle, and the inflationary pressures it also has at the same time is there in the impact part. With all this discussion, now you need to know what are the key points you need to take, which is the larger perspective of this news case. The key aspects which you need to take is the depreciation of rupee, reasons, impacts, and way forward. The forex reserve itself, what it consists of, what are the major things. Then special drawing rights and reserve tranche position. With that, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope the session was quite helpful to you. Thank you.